All right, everyone, this is Fernando here yet again for another My Movie Review podcast. Well, this was another movie that I saw during the recent Austin snowstorm, and that way it was a great chance for me to catch up on it again after only having seen it once a couple of years back. And so I thought to myself, when this was available on the streaming sites for free, I thought to myself, why not? Why not give this film another chance to see if it got any better this next go around? Because initially I didn't think much of it, and I'm happy to state that yes, it definitely has aged well over time. And what I'm talking about is, of course, the movie you're seeing on the left, the poster for, which is Wolf Creek 2. Definitely not for the lighthearted. This movie is absolutely a step up when it comes to the gore and the violence from the first film. But surprisingly enough, there's still a lot of originality and a lot of good scenes, like storyline and other type of riveting scenes within this sequel, and we'll talk about that here in just one moment. So let's go ahead and let's feature this My Movie Review podcast. In this case, my review of Wolf Creek 2. So I had originally seen Wolf Creek 1 a couple of years back. If I had to guess, it was probably around the early 2010s or so, maybe even the late 2000s. And it was just a one and done type deal. It's a good movie, the first Wolf Creek, but definitely something that just leaves a horrible impression on you. Like when it comes to the violence and the way it was presented so realistically, like it is not a shocking like a horror type movie. Instead, it's almost more like psychological. Like you're almost witnessing a documentary associated with a serial killer and doing all of his actions before you. So it was definitely a film that I only saw once, only wanted to see once, but it absolutely made quite a lasting impression on me, not just from the acting, but also with the way the movie looked. I mean, the way it was dark, but it was brightly lit. It just had a lot of beautiful coloring associated with it. I love movies that have vivid colors on them, and the cinematography and the atmosphere, everything just worked well. So, whenever the second movie came out, Wolf Creek 2, I thought to myself, yeah, let me go ahead, I'll check it out. I waited until it was available. Remember when Netflix was doing those DVD by mails? Well, I remember checking it out one time, just renting it and then seeing it there at my house by DVD. And originally, I thought to myself, no, this definitely it didn't quite hit the mark when it came to the first movie. This was just a run of the mill, almost type horror movie where it was him once again chasing, in this case, the character Mick Taylor chasing some teenagers somewhere out there in the outback of Australia. And so when I saw it a second time, just recently in the pandemic, I thought to myself, wow, what a difference a second viewing makes. Now that you know exactly what's going to happen and that you anticipate and know all the spoilers beforehand, it makes you truly look at every scene afterward while it's playing. And then that way you get to re examine it and then realize that there's a lot of good stuff happening within the film, a lot of good storylines, a lot of good action, and then a lot of good acting as well from the actors there. So right off the bat, I'll talk about the pros and the cons, and then I'll mention my final stars when it comes to the review. So the pros are this: number one, right off the bat, you never can anticipate what's happening next within the film. I mean, at the very beginning, you obviously see Mick handle whatever is happening with those cops. And so it tells you that it's going to go in a completely different direction. This is a legendary villain. This guy Mick Taylor. I mean, he is someone. I think the guy's name is John Jarrett, the actor that plays him. He is someone that just gives it his all. I mean, it's absolutely amazing that you're witnessing this kind of evil character, something like that, just playing before you on this film, and then realizing that this is not acting. Like this is truly something else entirely different. So really, really great to see him back within that role itself. So the way he handled those cops again gives you an indication of where things are going to go this next go around, meaning it's going to be completely unconventional. So, for example, at the beginning, there's that huge prologue that focuses on those, and you'll see them here now, those two teens, the ones that I believe are from Germany, the way they're hiking and then just going about the outback. You think that it's going to focus on them throughout the entire film, right? Kind of like the way it did in the first film, how you followed one set of teens or young women and a guide throughout the entire movie. But no, in this case, after a certain point, in a quite shocking scene, you immediately see him take care of that young man, the guy with the blonde hair. And then afterward, you think it's going to focus on the young woman. You know how there's always those type of token characters within most horror films, how it's always the young, brave woman that almost survives to the end. Maybe makes it, maybe doesn't, but it's going to focus on her. But no, in a shock twist, you get to see obviously what happens to her, and then it switches to this other guy. Now he's the one that's going to be the person that's going to be persecuted by Mick Taylor, and so you think that that's how it's going to work. But yet again, the movie takes another twist where it goes back to his area, Mick Taylor's dungeon of sorts, the one that you're seeing there now. And then now it's almost like a psychological thriller. It's almost like Silence of the Lambs when it comes to Clarice, and then you have Hannibal, and they're just talking for a good period. That's what happens throughout the majority of the second half of the film. And I thought to myself originally when I first saw it, I thought it was a little boring, and I thought it went and kind of a little wayward. But seeing it the second time, wow, it definitely the scenes were much more riveting when they were just talking and then singing songs and him trying to play a little cat and mouse game, Mick Taylor with that young man, and then vice versa, seeing who could outwit the other or try to escape each other. And then that's where things just again took a whole different turn when it comes to that. I mean, obviously, like you're seeing him right there scared out of his mind. That's basically the second half of the movie, and I thought it worked really, really well. And then once again, the cinematography is just absolutely gorgeous. You get to see the outback presented in its vast expanse. You get to see from bright, cheery, sunny weather like there, all the way down to the cold dungeon. Almost like a Neuer-like effect, the way when it goes to mixed dungeon, and you get to see like all the corpses that are there, all the bodies, the skeletons, and some of the people even still alive there. And so it was just amazing to see the difference, and I thought it worked really, really well. One thing that works also really well with the film is this minimalistic approach. Less is definitely more. You don't see, in other words, more of mixed area. It leaves you wanting to see more, and then you get to see some other things within the outback itself, like this home inhabited by the elderly folks there. You get to see maybe that as a different pace of change, but otherwise, it's just pretty much once again the Australian wilderness and everything else that it encompasses almost forever of just pure nothingness. So once again, it's presented very, very well. And of course, this is the basis. It's supposedly on true stories, and it is. There's a guy who was the backpacker murderer. I think his name was Ivan Milat, if I'm not mistaken. He's the one that this character is based on, and then some of the examples and the murders that he did are based on these characters. I mean, these characters are based on those poor, unfortunate souls as well. So you get to see some of that true horror, the way it's presented there, and that just adds more to the shock value and everything associated with it. Now, as far as the cons, stuff that didn't work with it, the only thing that comes to mind is the fact that I think it could have expanded more on Mick and what his origins were, what his basis is, why he's so xenophobic, especially towards so many of the people that he encounters. I mean, you obviously in his dungeon you get to see all those corpses and everything there, indicating that he's been doing it for a long time, and he seems to purposely target just outsiders, people that are visiting that country. So I was hoping that it would expand more upon it, but it just never did. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, like you get to see some of his area there, but not all of it. It leaves you wanting more, and so I would like to have seen more of that. I think that the when it focused on originally on those backpackers and others, it had to do it because again, it has to present their stories. You want to kind of root for them and feel sympathetic for them after what happens afterwards to them. But otherwise, I think obviously Mick is just such a rich character that I think it should have focused more on him. Otherwise, but who knows? Maybe it's still the right thing because at the end of the day, if you do too much of a good thing, then obviously it loses its speciality. So maybe having too much information on Mick would make him not be as good as he usually is in this case. But yeah, so that's at least the cons associated with the film. And then as far as the stars, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely riveting from beginning to end, and it was definitely a much better improvement this second go around watching this film. And as always, the way I merit things, like when something is really good, is I do these viewings while I'm exercising, while I'm on the elliptical, and then while I'm doing weights. So if it's keeping me riveted during that time period, in other words, if I'm not even thinking about the weights themselves and the elliptical, then it's doing its job. And that was the case here with Wolf Creek 2. So that's why it's getting 4 out of 5 stars because I was absolutely wanting to see what was going to happen next one more time as far as that stuff. But otherwise, I hear rumors that there's a Wolf Creek 3 that's now in production. So once again, the third movie is going to come out apparently next year or maybe the year after that. I guess we shall see. I'm liking too that they are the director, in other words, I think his name is Greg McLean, is purposely spacing these movies out. The first one came out in 2005. Second one, it looks like 2014, and now this next one, who knows? It'll be like next year, 2022, something like that. So these aren't rushed. These are almost like the Riddick films, how they're made with special love and care, if you could call it that, because they want to make sure that everything is done with the toppest quality possible. In other words, not just bang one simple movie after another, and in terms of one year this sequel, the next one, the next, and so on. No, this is going to be something where it's dedicated, it's a craft, the people are putting attention to the story, making sure that everything works out well afterwards. So looking forward to Wolf Creek 3, seeing what happens there, and then of course the continuation of Mick Taylor's character. One final thing too I wanted to mention. Have you heard those rumors that Mick Taylor's character is not a person, but is instead some kind of ghost or some kind of entity that just happens to be roaming those Australian outbacks? I remember reading about that online. There's probably still some of that stuff out there, but the idea is that's why he can suddenly appear almost out of nowhere where he normally shouldn't be, where a normal person wouldn't be without some kind of effort, and that's why he's there. He's almost like a vengeful ghost of some sort. Let me know what your thoughts are on that too, and see if that particular theory holds any merit. But all right, everyone, if you want to check out the film, I include the links below, and then that way you can see Wolf Creek 2. Definitely a step up from the first film, and definitely a harrowing horror film that still leaves quite an impression. So, all right, everyone, thanks again as always. Take care.